Babel's Dawn presents the last in a series of presentations answering the question, what makes language unusual? In this final talk, I want to reply to the implicit question of, so what? We have seen three elements that make language different from every other communication system in the animal kingdom. These are topics, the use of joint attention, and the role of a community. This list points us toward a different definition of language. Instead of the ancient description of language as sound combined with meaning, we can now see that language is a tool used to share knowledge about any arbitrary topic by piloting attention and combining focal points into a whole. From this perspective, meaning becomes an archaic concept. However, I am not so foolish as to suppose people will stop talking about meaning. But from now on, when people ask about the meaning of a word, I will understand the question as asking how a word works to pilot attention, or to combine other words into whole sentences. But is there anything else to be learned from listing three features of language that are not part of other animal communication systems? For one thing, it makes very clear just how dependent human society is on language and how thousands of generations of language speakers have turned our species into something remarkable. First, we are knowledgeable about many things and we actively teach others what we know. Chimpanzees learn much during their lives, but the next generation has to relearn the same things. With people, knowledge can continue to increase from one generation to the next. Thus, people are able to adapt to new environments very quickly. No wonder that people have moved into many biological niches, while apes have not. We can be tempted to feel quite superior to silent animals, but it is our knowledge more than ourselves that has produced this gap. Second, attention makes us aware of something, so people can use language to think on a conscious level. Verbal thought splits a thinker in two, playing both speaker and listener at the same time. This technique allows individuals to figure things out by themselves, gaining new knowledge to share with others. These private discoveries are not necessarily true, but they can be shared anyway, producing the paradox of a human species that is unusually thoughtful, and yet is often guided by false and even bizarre theories. Third, language is not neutral toward communities and cooperation. It either promotes them or subverts them, but it does not ignore them. Language makes cooperation, trust, and community possible, but it can also undermine them. There are many ways languages support communities. Classical languages, the founding documents of a culture, are often written in a language that is no longer spoken, but is learned by scholars as a way of keeping in contact with the founders and their teaching. Prestige languages, used to associate oneself with greater power. Today, this is mainly seen in the non-English speaking world, where knowledge of English is a prestigious accomplishment that provides access to power. Trade languages, a language used by neither party as a first language, but serves as a means of communicating between people who do not share a common language. American troops in Vietnam spoke a pidgin that enabled them to conduct business with the Vietnamese. Neither speaker saw any prestige in the skill, but the need to cooperate made the language useful. Majority languages, spoken by most people in a neighborhood. It enables people to live together and cooperate when they are needed. Most people's thoughts, knowledge, and sense of identity come from their majority language. An excellent history of language communities is by Nicholas Ostler, titled Empires of the Word. It sets forth what I have come to think of as the law of language and community. Language does not grow through the assertion of power, but through the creation of a larger community. Using language to promote power subverts community. Imperial powers create prestige languages that are learned by the social climbers, but the ordinary people do not use that language, and when the imperial power fades, so does the language. Similarly, pidgins or trade languages have no fixed grammar and no prestige and are mainly used to express power relationships. When the reasons for these contexts fade, the pidgins are lost. Yet, languages can also spread, and their increase and endurance testifies to the inclusiveness of the language's community. Nothing proves the American ability to welcome and absorb immigrants better than the fact that the descendants of the newcomers speak American English, just as the gaps in that linguistic spread mark the exceptions to the welcoming behavior. The rapid spread and long persistence of the Arabic language throughout North Africa is a strong clue that the Islamic faith really did and does gather in and unite originally disparate peoples. Similar stories of welcome and community growth are evident in language communities across the globe. Complicating the modern story of growing and shrinking language communities is the rise of professional communicators. This might seem like an elaboration of the ancient study of rhetoric, except that rhetoric was primarily concerned with how to organize a persuasive argument. It took topics and attention for granted. Today's professional communicators are interested in controlling, not persuading, so naturally they prefer to operate on a subconscious level in which the audience does not need to pay attention. Although advertising and public relations in some form or another is very old, the businesses were only professionalized in the early 20th century. Instead of the speech triangle that governs language, the professionals aim for the simpler controller-controllee relationships of the rest of the animal kingdom. By now we can see some of the effects on community that come when, for generations, people are treated as controllees in a power relationship. In the most notorious case, the tobacco companies spent millions for years in an effort to keep the public confused about the health risks of smoking cigarettes. Instead of increasing knowledge, these companies decreased it. The most obvious result of a continuous bombardment of advertising is its effect on community. It breaks it apart. Today we are besieged by efforts to control our actions. On broadcast media, on the internet, as we walk down the street, we are continuously bombarded by advertising that confuses, manipulates, and isolates. In the early days, people at least shared the experience of being manipulated by the same thing, so the public could recall nostalgically the first time they heard a chorus of people singing, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke." But that unity was an unintended side effect of the business, and with the internet, different people met different advertisements. This separation by professional communicators is most apparent in the Trump White House, which has abandoned any pretense of speaking to the entire nation. It ended regular news briefings for reporters, while it increased availability of White House spokespeople on preferred channels. We have regular news readers and watchers who never encounter somebody from the White House on their sources, while viewers of Fox News see them all the time. With such a constant assault on the communicative glue that helps hold people together, it is no wonder that countries are being polarized, which is itself a euphemism for the more blunt, coming apart. You wonder why your country is coming apart. Look to the way professional communicators view topics, attention, and community.